Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome everyone to this edition of Digital Africa VIP Leadership Series. My name is Bosun Ayeni. I'm a director in Digital Africa and a member of the Digital Africa Board. Today, we're excited to have with us a distinguished African, a man that I always say needs no introduction, but because we are here to listen and we have sometimes within the audience somebody we are meeting for the first time, we would therefore crave your indulgence to introduce our guest. The Digital Africa Leadership Series is a platform focused on identifying, celebrating, and sharing the experiences of technology, business, and policy leaders in Africa who have made a big impact and are still available to share their experiences with the rest of us. And that's why we have here today Dr. Ernest Ndukwe, OFR. He is a professional telecoms engineer, a corporate executive, entrepreneur, and a former public servant, a business management trainer with over 38 international and national experience in business management in telecoms industry, majority of which has been in C-level positions in private multinational companies and in government in telecoms policy and regulation. Dr. Ndukwe is a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Management, a fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Engineers. He is an author of several papers on utility regulation, sector policy, and business management. He has been a regulator of the telecoms industry and a representative of Nigeria at the International ITU Governance Board. He also was appointed by President Olusegun Obasanjo GCFR in 2000, the year 2000, to preside over the Nigerian Telecommunications Commission, the ICT Industry Telecommunications PLC, and had held several senior and top-level executive positions in leading multinational companies. He is also a vice chairman at the ITU, like I said earlier, representing Nigeria. Currently, he is the chairman of MTN Nigeria Communication PLC, and he has previously served as co-chairman of the Presidential Committee to develop the strategy and roadmap for universal broadband access for Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome Dr. Ernest Ndukwe, OFR, as he shares his experience with us on this edition of the Digital Africa VIP Leadership Series. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now that we have started, we want to trust and believe that things will go pretty smoothly. Thank you for bearing all the inconveniences as we get off the ground. I would like to start by asking you something a bit personal. Of course, when we read your profile, it is obvious that you're a man of many parts. You've served at the highest level in public service, private enterprise, you've been on the board, you've been in executive position, you've been all over. You've pretty much, as they say, been there, done that. But how would you best describe yourself? Do you see yourself more as a public servant, as a loving father, a career telecoms engineer, or just a business executive? How would you describe yourself?
Also, I think I'll describe myself by all the things you've just mentioned. Quite honestly, I started my career, let me live the family life, because obviously that's with me all the time, and that has always been with me. And I enjoy family life very much. I'm a proud father of a number of children. And this morning I added a grandchild to the number of children that I have.
That's a big one.
So
congratulations. That's a big one.
That is a regular part of my life.
Wow.
But I started my professional life in the private sector and rose to become the managing director of a local telecommunications company, General Telecom PLC. Started off as GEC Telecommunications. And when the British people decided to divest from Nigeria, at some point when the country was having challenges, we changed the name to General Telecom. So it was from that position as MD of General Telecom that I was appointed to the public service as the chief executive and executive chair, vice chairman of Nigerian Communications Commission. I always tell people all the time that when you're the managing director of a private company, you're answerable and all your actions work towards making your shareholders happy and owners of the organization happy. But when you're serving at the level I served in government, at a decision-making level in government, nothing compares to that at all in terms of the responsibility that you have and the fact that the actions you take actually affect the whole country. It affects everybody in the country. So it's not something to be taken lightly. So when I compare the two, I think I would say that my time at the NCC had been the most professionally fulfilling time for me, despite the fact that I've spent more years in the private sector. But because what you do when you're in government affects the whole country. And if you're a bad leader, the country will suffer for it. And if you're a good leader, the country will fly and become, they become happy. People are happy and there's progress. So that is how I would like to answer that question. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Ndukwe, for that. In fact, talking about leaders, you know that we went to town and asked 100 professionals, how good of a leader do you consider Dr. Ernest Ndukwe to be? And the feedback we got was interesting. So on a scale of 1 to 10, the respondent said to us that Dr. Ernest Ndukwe is rated 8.36. I mean, I think that by any and all grading standard is clearly an A student.
Thank you very much. And I greet all those people who did the rating.
I'd like to take a reaction to that, Dr. Ernest.
One thing that, which is what I say about your life in the public service, it makes you answerable to a wider group of people. And as I go through the airports, as I move around as a private citizen in the country, up till a few days ago, I still had people who would stop and say congratulations for the job you did at the NCC. So it's something very, very rewarding, and I'm really excited that there's that positive response to the survey you made. At least I was not there when it was being carried out. So I feel very fulfilled, and I feel happy that people have voted that I did my best and would rate me that high. Thank you very much.
We also went ahead to ask them how much of an impact they think you made while you were at the helm of affairs at the NCC. And the response was equally benevolent. It was 8.44 on a scale of 1 to 10.
Okay. Did you say 8.44?
Yes, 8.44 on a scale of 10. I mean, that's pretty impressive. So, like you said, the feedback you get on the street when you come across people, people truly appreciate that you're a great and excellent leader. And people also believe that you did make an impact. So thank you very much for your
We thank God. We thank God.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ernest. I was going to ask you a quick question around leadership. One of these all-time old questions around leaders. Leaders in the professional space. I've listened to your story. You just affirmed that a number of them see you on the road and they talk. Now, please tell us, are leaders made? Are they born? Or did the situation of life shape you into being a leader? What is your take on this long-standing philosophy about the making of a leader?
That has been an age-old question, actually, whether leaders are made or born. I will say it's a bit of a combination of the two. If you look around, even your children at home, you'll find out that some of them exhibit leadership qualities. So some of them are born with those innate leadership qualities and instincts. When they're around a group of people, people look up to them or gather around them, and they lead in opinions and things like that. But there again, to be the best leader you can be, especially in a corporate environment or in a nation, you also need some training and development. Leaders must go for courses. In the modern world, they need to be well educated. And I'll even go further that in today's world, you will not be the best leader you can be without having exposure to various aspects of life, including information technology and the like. Because today, you need a lot of information to be able to lead well. And that's why they say a leader is as good as the information he gets from those around him. So a leader, one of the best things a leader can do for himself, especially when you're at the helm of affairs of a country or an organization, is to surround yourself with smart and intelligent people who can give you good advice from time to time. When I arrived at the NCC, what we did was to look for the best hands possible around the country. Before you were employed in NCC in those days, you went through some IQ training. You had to pass a basic test, because if you're representing a country, you need to be well informed and you need to be smart enough to do the job that you are assigned to do. So it's so important that people are trained to become good leaders. And you mentioned also the fact that as you move ahead in life, you might have successes and failures, and those shape your life. And you're able to know who to trust and who not to trust. A leader must be somebody that is able to assess people and be able to choose the best people and keep them around him, because that's how he gets to lead well. So, like I said, it's a bit of both. For me, without sounding as if one is going into the realm of self-praise, I've always assumed leadership roles right from my elementary school days. I used to be class monitor. In my secondary school days, I was a prefect in the school. In the public sector or in the private sector, I became president of Association of Telecommunications Companies. You know, these are all people look up to you for leadership. And there's also an element of trust. You must be somebody that is trustworthy for people to be able to cede leadership to you willingly. I'm not talking about leadership that people get by rigging elections and things like that. People, if people willingly cede leadership to you or recognize you and appoint you to positions because of the values they think you possess that you can share, then you know that that is important, because leaders have certain qualities that draw people to them. And I must say that a friend of mine who is late today, when he saw me about 30, 35 years ago, virtually predicted my life as it were. So I don't know what he usually calls me, that he is my Nostradamus. So sometimes there are certain aspects of you that draw people to you, and certain qualities that people see that they can relate to. And so I therefore want to conclude by saying that people have innate leadership qualities, but to be the best leadership, the best leader they can be, they must also get trained and exposed to the things of life in order to be able to judge well and be a good leader overall. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ernest. I'd like to extend the concept of leadership. You talked about your background in education, your early years in secondary school. I'd like to ask you a question related to education and leadership. As you are aware, everyone today is talking about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. What aspect of your education, I'm glad you pointed out that you were a prefect in secondary school and the whole story started from the home, right? Now, what aspect of education related to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics do you think leaders need, especially in telecoms? Is that sufficient, or should we also be looking at infusing some aspect of humanities, arts, and social sciences? Because these days you want to strike a balance between all the quotients: intelligent quotient, information quotient, emotional quotient, and social quotient. What kind of balance chemistry does a leader need, especially in our telecom space, engineering space, to be able to lead?
Thank you for the question. Luckily, many engineering courses today also take courses in business management. It's not just, if you look at most universities, they also take courses in the area of management. My daughter, for instance, who read engineering also, her degree, had a master's degree in engineering and management. Some of us had degrees in engineering, but with infused courses in various aspects of social sciences. Let me also say that engineering is rather a versatile subject. If you look at some managing directors of banks today, some of them had degrees in engineering. If you go to the city in London, where you have many of those financial institutions located, you find that engineers are popular because of their analytic stance. They tend to be analytic in looking at issues. So I think it's all combined, and I like to agree that you need to infuse experience in the humanities with whatever training you've had before. I know that lawyers will argue that the law makes you versatile also. And I guess many other professions might argue in that direction. But let me say that life's journey requires that you continue to train and retrain. My staff, either at the private sector or at the NCC, will tell you that when accountants bring figures, maybe the annual accounts, they're arguing some of the figures they have there with them, because I took it upon myself to also learn a bit about what they're saying. And quite often, not all the time, but quite often, I win in some arguments, because there are other things that come with analysis that bring to bear on such things. So you're very correct in saying that you have to infuse the humanities into whatever professional knowledge you have in order to make it a balanced area, because no profession is an island. like today, I tell people that without basic IT knowledge, I don't care whether you're a lawyer, an accountant, a social scientist, you must know how to use a computer in today's world. If you're not, then you are an illiterate. You're a technology illiterate, and a technology illiterate has no room in the modern world, because you must be able to find information. You must know how to seek and find out information that will guide you in decision making. And we've passed the stage where everything is stored in the brain. Most things are stored in the computer and in the clouds today. So you need to have basic knowledge. It doesn't matter the profession you belong to, to be able to do your work. Basic knowledge of IT.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ernest. You know, you just raised a very interesting and passionate point of mine. My wife is also a lawyer, and we always have this debate about the definition of the term learned. As you know, lawyers like to refer to themselves as being the learned ones, but we are beginning to have the debate to say perhaps technology people are now the ones that are co-learned at a minimum, if not about to take the crown away from lawyers. I know it will be a difficult profession to unseat, but the battle is on, isn't it?
Oh, the battle is definitely on.
I wouldn't want to take the lawyers up at this instance, but there's something interesting you said. You know, it is Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, that raised the concern around the way we think as humans. That is worried that more and increasingly people are beginning to think like machines. So for him, he would not worry about the fact that machines are being trained to act like humans, but would worry more about human beings thinking like machine and not taking into account emotions and thought and ethics into the things we do. We just think quite logically. You did praise a lot of people with engineering background as being extremely logical thinkers. But are there downsides to this? Are there things that worry you or concern you about the way that professionals deal with the issues arising from the use and development of technology?
Quite honestly, I like to look at technology as an enabler. It's not the be all and end all. I think Tim Cook might be postulating that people might get to the stage where they will start looking at things from that aspect of computer is either positive or negative or 0 or 1 and things like that. I'm not sure human beings have reached that stage yet. And I'm not sure humans can ever reach that stage. Even the aspect of computer technology, artificial intelligence, and things like that, and robotics, where we train machines to almost be as human, like human beings. But you know, the word about garbage in, garbage out still rules the computer world. Because if you feed garbage to that robot, you might get the robot confused. But there is continuous improvement in that development to even infuse emotions into robots. But quite honestly, they are just as good as the kind of software that was developed to control them and those emotions. It will be unfortunate if humans start doing things without emotions, because it's emotions that enable us become our brother's keeper. For instance, if you see people who are less fortunate than yourself, it's actually an emotion that enables you to lend a helping hand. A computer or a robot might not be able to do that unless it's programmed in a particular way to respond to a particular thing. I just hope that we will never get to a stage of that area where Tim Cook was thinking about, where we do things without emotions. Human beings are emotional beings. Sometimes I do argue that the black man, part of the problem with the black man is that the black man is too emotional. There are certain times when too much emotions can be a disadvantage, and where you can justify a wrong thing because you're emotionally attached to the person who committed the offense. Those things are bad for the society and for everybody. So sometimes too much emotions can also be a deterrent. It can be a disadvantage to society. But comparing computers to humans or computerization to human way of behavior, I think we're still a long way from that. Humans will continue to develop computers and write the software that control the computers. And I'm not sure that we can cover all the emotional aspects of life that can be infused in a software that will control a robot, that we will not be able to do what we do as human beings going forward.
Excellent, excellent, Dr. Ndukwe. Now, you have made the point that technology is here for good. There are a lot of good things we can do with technology, and that's indeed is true. Even on the continent of Africa, there are a lot of entrepreneurs doing great things, solving big problems with technology. Now, with the exception, you know, you're chairman of MTN PLC Nigeria, with the exception of MTN and all of MTN's business interests. Which technology enterprise have you been watching out for, tickle your fancy, or you think is onto something great, or you're excited about that you'd like to share with us?
Thank you for that. Thinking about it, I tend to look more at the up and coming young people that are doing various things at various locations in the country. And I'd like to recognize the ingenuity that goes on at places like the Computer Village in Lagos and in various locations where you have something similar. I also know that there are many IT companies that are doing great things in the country today. Some of them have won recognitions from investors abroad and have been successful in developing a few things. Talking specifically about companies, there's an organization called Andela. I also think that they're doing something good. They've been developing manpower and skills, which I think says a lot of things about what Nigerians can do within our Nigerian space. Of course, since we've left MTN out of the fray, there are other companies that are doing wonderful things in the telecommunications area. Of course, we have competitors like Airtel, Globacom, and to a lesser degree, Nine Mobile. They're also doing their best to add value to the environment. I think also that when you look around, there are a number of individuals that are making their mark in various areas. I might not be able to identify all of them today, but the truth is that many people are developing all kinds of software, and there's a company that I'm also associated with called System Specs, which sometimes is not sufficiently recognized. System Spec developed what government is using today for ensuring that monies, we have single account in the country. This software was developed locally and has not failed the country in any way. There are other companies like Computer Warehouse Group that are also doing various great things in the IT area. I don't want to start mentioning too many people, but suffice it to say that many companies are doing great work in comparing themselves with international peers around the world. And quite honestly, another point to mention is that Nigerian workers are being snatched by the more developed countries, and there's been a lot of movement from this country to places like Canada, the US, Australia, Europe. They are holding their own and becoming forces to be reckoned with in the environments where they find themselves. So a lot is happening. Even within Africa itself, there are many companies in Africa that are actually developing things that are of interest to the world in general. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. But now I think we can begin to bring it closer to home. I know we didn't want you to talk about MTN the last time, but now maybe we should talk about MTN. You made some inferences and mentioned specifically some of the companies in the telecom space, especially in Nigeria, that are doing quite a lot. I would like to ask you a question that someone in the industry specifically requested. So this is, I have to quote this question because it was a request, it isn't my question. So someone in the industry said I should ask you, Dr. Ernest, that why is it that in your own country of Nigeria, no telecom company is as successful as MTN? Whereas Nigeria is about 40%, contributes about 40% of MTN global revenue, yet other telecoms companies in Nigeria are not doing as much as MTN is doing in the country. Why is that so? I know you just applauded them a few seconds ago, but
thank you very much. No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. There's no problem with that. Luckily, I think I'm in the best position to answer that question because I was there at the beginning of time. As you know, some people think that I'm the first EVC of NCC, but the truth is that I'm actually the third.
Absolutely.
The telecom industry was the starting of the liberalization of the industry was in 1992 when the first legislation was made about the industry. And subsequently, an EVC was appointed in the person of Engineer Romantu, who piloted the affairs of the industry through the very difficult period when NITAL was holding sway as the monopoly organization and that didn't want any competition from outside the country, from outside, from within the country. Eventually, around 97, some Nigerian companies were licensed to provide telecommunication services. The likes of Multilinks, the likes of, there is even CIL, which was started the big man at Glow himself. There was another company, various companies, there were about 6 or 7. They had to struggle at that time with NITAL not wanting to allow them to exist. The ministers tried at that time, but they did not try well enough. And those companies, like Intercellular, were all there when Nigeria decided to liberalize the telecom industry further in 1999, when President Obasanjo came in government. Those companies had the chance to scale, but unfortunately, many of them did not have the money to do the mega investment that was required. In fact, many papers were written by various people, including myself, talking about, use the word timidity of our financial institutions that could not see beyond their noses that telecommunications was the next frontier. And many of those organizations, in fact, the banks were not even big enough to finance big telecommunications development. So despite the fact that those companies had what I'll describe as a head start, they did not have the zeal. Maybe they had the zeal a bit, but not enough zeal to put in whatever they had into investing in this vital area. Because in those days, I used to moan about the fact that countries like Cameroon had GSM before Nigeria. Our monopoly company, NITAL, could not even rise to take because they had all it took to become the biggest telecommunications company in Nigeria. But unfortunately, many ministers and many managers of our economy instead saw Nitel as a cash cow where they go to milk, not as a business that needed to be developed. And that's why Nitel could not scale. And many of these companies were busy trying to interconnect with Nitel, these other companies I mentioned, when actually, if they developed their network, because we only had 28,000 mobile connections in 1999, 28,000. If one company came out and installed 50,000 mobile lines, Nitel will be begging them to interconnect with them. But unfortunately, they could not see the future. So when we came on board, we had a direct instruction to see what we can do to improve telecom services in Nigeria. And that's why we decided that, because we identified the fact that many of those companies did not have the foresight, neither did they have the finances to be able to invest. They were just doing little things all over the place. So we now organize that landmark auction in year 2001, January 2001, where we organize that auction in such a way that only companies who were serious enough and had the finances to scale were able to win the auction. And then that time, we now had MTN and Econet. Econet is now Airtel.
Airtel,
Yes. And subsequently, about a year or two later, Globacom was licensed. But one would ask, how come many of the Nigerian companies could not participate in the auction? It was also down to the same issue about the timidity of our financial institutions at that time, who were not ready to fund those people. It's also as a result of the fact that Nitel, that was actually one of the biggest companies in Nigeria at that time, was bogged down by red tape and government processes that eventually, in order to encourage them, a license was actually reserved for Nitel, because we suspected that if they bidded with other people, they might not be able to win. So it was decided at government level that a license be reserved for Nitel. And my brother, despite that, ministers, government agencies still held Nitel back. There was a time the head of, the head of HR was appointed managing director of Nitel. In today's world, if you don't have the right person at the helm of affairs of a private company, that company will never scale. If at that time we stopped playing politics, stopped doing things about where people come from, and advertised for a managing director of NITEL, because when you're transiting from a monopoly to a non-monopoly arrangement, you need to have people who think like businessmen, not people who will be doing things as usual. It happened in the UK, it happened in Germany. They went and sought private people and appointed them to head those government agencies that were there before. And that's how you get, for instance, the last managing director of MTN Group has now been employed by British Telecom to head one of their enterprise units. He'll be resuming there early next year. So the issue here is that you actually source, it's just like finding people to be on your board. You actually go out to seek the best hands possible to manage your company. In Nigeria, we do things and we kill ourselves because of it. It's only this country that people appoint chief medical directors on the basis of quota. How can you appoint your teacher in your secondary school on the basis of quota system? You can't do that. You can only appoint the best hands, the best teacher in mathematics to teach mathematics to your children. I, for instance, with my children, my grandchildren today, I would like the best teacher to teach them. I wouldn't want to get some non-entity just because it's from my village to be the teacher of my children, because you want them to get the best information possible. The sooner we stop that, even it permeated to the private sector, where some people who run businesses even make the mistakes of even appointing sometimes their children to take over heads of affairs of an organization when they are ill-equipped to manage such organization. And what we've seen is that after a few years, those organizations cease to exist. So the issue here is that when you want the best, you go for the best. Put systems in place. So if we had appointed a good managing director of NITEL at that time, I am sure NITEL would have given MTN and Airtel and Globacom a run for their money. But unfortunately, we were busy playing politics. And NITEL was the only company with the scale. I mean, they had everything. They had fiber on ground. They have microwave all over the country. Can anybody tell me why NITEL is not existing today? It's because of those things I've mentioned, that we've not used the best hands to manage our resources. And once you do that, once you don't do that, you will always fail. So for the person that asked you that question, I will reply to him that those Nigerian companies had what I call a head start. They had a first mover advantage, but they didn't seize the advantage. And that's why they are where they are today. When we were giving license for GSM, some of them already had networks. Why didn't you team up with any international body to be able to scale? So these are the issues, and that's the way I can explain it. Thank you very much.
Excellent, excellent. You know, I have to allow you run through that because some of those things are in the public domain, but you can never hear it as well as somebody who was right there in the center of the storm. Thank you so much for taking us down that memory lane. But before I move on that point, I would like to ask, just for the case benefit of posterity, and perhaps we can all benefit from this, especially the companies in question. What can they do differently from where they are now? We know MTN is leaps and bounds ahead, but what should they do differently? You said they were timid, so should they be bolder? You said they were perhaps not judicious enough in the appointment of the executive leadership and the board leadership. If they fix that, would that work? You said the bank's funding was not, they were also not bold enough. If the bank come out now and throw $1 billion at any of them or 5, will it make a difference? Will they make them more successful?
3 things. You need good finances. Secondly, you need good management. And thirdly, you need discipline in terms of managing resources. I think it's important to say here, though I didn't want this, I had actually sent you a message that I don't want it to be an MTN discussion, because that would be unfair to other people. I don't want to seize the opportunity, but I need to make this point. I think MTN and Airtel have been arguing about which company dialed the first mobile phone number after they became licensed.
Who made the first call?
Who made the first call? Airtel, Econet then wants to believe that they made the first call. And MTN still insists that they made the first call. But the question to be asked is, why is MTN so much ahead of Airtel? I think MTN, the secret is that it's a particularly disciplined organization. From its roots, it has always been a well-run organization. It has not had board squabbles. The first board MTN had in 2001, some of them only retired in last year, 2019. Meanwhile, if you go to Airtel, they've had various owners, various quarrels on the board, various issues. You don't blame anybody for that. It's actually the way you manage. If you manage a company well, it scales. And one thing that people don't know also, that for the first few years of existence of MTN in Nigeria, MTN did not pay dividends to their shareholders for the first few years. In fact, I think it was 5 years. They recognized the importance of scale. So they were pumping in all the profits, all the earnings back into building networks. They started building their own microwave links. They started building their own optic fiber links all across the country, because it's a matter of foresight. It's a matter of planning. So I don't want to dwell too much on that, because I might end up giving some company secrets that I should not. But let it be said that technology changes. The best company today might not be the best company tomorrow. A few years ago, Facebook was not in the reckoning. Today, it's a much bigger company. People might not make it in terms of telecommunications service delivery, because in every country, there is usually a certain number after which the market gets saturated. But in new technology areas, there are opportunities. And that reminds me of a company that I'm also, when you ask me about companies that excite me, one company is a company called Xenox Technologies. It's a company that is well run. It's a company that is making a big mark in the industry, but quietly and not boasting about it. But it's one of the biggest IT companies in Africa today, without anybody recognizing it. And that's the point I'm making, that you might not be the biggest telecommunications provider, but you can be the next Bezos in Africa. You can be the next Facebook in Africa. You can be, there are things that are developed that catches market and it scales. For instance, the platform that we are talking on now, Zoom, when it started, they didn't know that it will scale to the level that it has scaled. Thanks to coronavirus, everybody has seen the importance of Zoom and Teams and such other networks. So my advice is that people should continue to look at opportunities and look at niche market areas and go there, because that's where they can scale. There are many countries, I mentioned system specs, but there are other companies that are also doing very well, even in that space, in the technology and financial industry space, that are already scaling. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, just before we leave MTN, I know we would like to get some juice about what the company is up to, but I just wanted to affirm something you already told us. The last time we spoke, we talked briefly about 5G, and you made us a promise. So I just want to be sure that we're still on the same page. We were talking about 5G, we were looking at the first large-scale enterprise commercial, I beg your pardon, large-scale commercial 5G rollouts in Africa. And you made us a promise that MTN was most likely going to be the company to do it, and Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa are most likely going to be the country and regulator to make it happen. Has that changed?
No, it has not changed. Definitely, because of the position of those countries in Africa, provided, and match my word, provided that there are no regulatory bottlenecks. I tell you, 5G would require a lot of base stations. If there are regulatory bottlenecks, then we will have a problem. 5G also requires large-scale optic fiber installations. That's why I am particularly excited, and I'd like to congratulate the Minister of Communications, Technology, and Digital Economy for his foresight with the Minister of Works and Housing, who came out with this bright idea that they will give a 2-year moratorium on right-of-way charges for Nigeria on federal highways in order to encourage optic fiber rollout and installation. 5G is a high-speed network. And like I mentioned during my last interview with you, countries are struggling to have first mover advantages in order to benefit from the advantages that 5G will bestow. I think that if Nigeria decides, South Africa decides, and Ghana decides that they want to be forerunners in this technology, then the regulatory environment must be such that it will be possible to earn those advantages on a very fast way. Because if we are waiting and people are thinking of how to make money, state governments are talking about IGR and all that, and anybody that comes around, I must also say that many states have actually improved in their welcoming of ICT companies and in their development. States like Ekiti State, states like Kaduna State, and a few others, many states in the north actually, have actually opened up their places. Anambra, Imo, yeah. Because it's so important. In fact, as far back as when I was EVC, I came out with a slang of fiber without borders. I was actually dreaming on an Africa that is laced with optic fiber. If that had happened, even the more developed countries of the world would actually be at the same level as us in Africa today. But it's not late, provided we have regulatory forbearance and regulatory environment that makes it possible for companies to be able to invest and invest massively, because 5G also requires massive investment.
Excellent, excellent, Dr. Ndukwe. Just before we move fully to looking forward, I'd like to take you back memory lane again. Now, while you were at the helm of affairs at NCC, at that time, when you were the EVC and chief executive, there were key issues that were front burner items for you. Broadband penetration, number portability, which you started, per second billing, digital access broadly. But one of those things which started then and is still with us, that perhaps looking back may not be as successful as we hoped it would be, was the concept of mobile money. Then there was this debate as to who should regulate this. Is it the central bank or should it be the NCC? At the end, we saw that it was a CBN-led coalition of regulation. Basically, everything sits at the CBN, but tried to get others involved. And we had a telco-led mobile money service, some bank-led, and then some independent mobile money operator who were licensed. Looking back, do you think the strategy on mobile money for Nigeria was the right one? Would it have been more successful if it had been managed by NCC?
This is a very political question. You might not know it, but the truth.
I mean, we're just looking back to see if it could have been better. We have more successes in other countries in Africa. So if you look at Kenya and a few other countries whose overall telecom service is not as successful as ours, have a much better mobile money service. So can we make an inference?
Yes, I think you've made the inference yourself, because when you mention places like Kenya, Ghana, one or two other countries, they've scaled a lot as far as mobile money is concerned, because they allowed telco-led mobile money provision. But if I might make a diplomatic statement today, and I have my reason for doing that, the truth is that every country has its own peculiar system and peculiarities. In Nigeria today, I think the CBN won the race in terms of insisting that mobile money is still money. And when it comes to regulating money and the payment and receipt of money, that it falls under the purview of the Central Bank of Nigeria. We don't have any problem with that. The fact that those countries had a head start before us doesn't mean that they would eventually be more successful than Nigeria in the future. What my own advice is that all telcos should be immediately licensed by the central bank to be able to provide mobile money. Once that is done, they have the funds to invest in making it possible and scale. Because Nigeria today still has issues about financial inclusion. I don't know the exact number of Nigerians that have bank accounts today. It must be about just over 50 million or thereabout. I don't know whether it's more than that. I mean, unique bank accounts. And we're talking about 180 or almost 200 million people in the country. And we also have to say, in terms of adult population, maybe Nigeria has about 110, 120 million adult population. So many adults in Nigeria are still unbanked. And if we want to talk about financial inclusion, the telcos are in a very strong position to drive financial inclusion as well as anybody else. In fact, there are places in Nigeria today where only MTN provides telco services in those places, some remote and locations in the country. So those people will be disenfranchised if the telcos are not licensed to be able to provide mobile money licenses, because mobile money services are better. So it's so important that we move faster than we've done. Let me say that as far as I'm concerned, bank-led process is good enough if only processes we can move faster with the licensing and let those who have the license be able to scale and provide financial inclusion to the larger population of Nigerians, and even improve trade and commerce, and make it possible for the government to be able to send facilities to even the facilities and assistance to remote locations where the banks are not able to cover today. Banks are not built to do micro issues, while mobile money goes to the micro of the micro, the ordinary man who sometimes does not have the sophistication of owning a regular bank account can do mobile money successfully. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Ernest, I would like to, in defense of the CBN, and this is just stating the fact, the central bank, as far as we know, already allowed a telco-led mobile money service. If I recall the last time we spoke, you did affirm that the telcos support a lot of small and growing businesses through their value-added services network. Now, the objective, if we understand it correctly, of the CBN is or was at that time to empower new businesses to focus on these mobile money services and encourage the telcos to work with these companies in a telco-led relationship. It appears the telco want their own licenses outright, want to run this as their own show, and are not comfortable working with or in partnership with other more focused payment businesses. Then the flip side is, we are also wondering, is this really a business issue or a regulatory challenge? Is it that the CBN is trying to do more regulation, or the CBN and the NCC have not been able to work out how to regulate money versus telco operation in this whole mobile money and telco-led and mobile money services arena generally? What's your take specifically on that?
I've told you before, this discussion is not about judging any organization, and I'll hate to do that. As at today, CBN is doing a brilliant job. When you said you want to support CBN, I don't know what you mean by that. I support CBN. I support whatever they want to do. CBN is actually one of the best regulatory agencies in the country today. So there's nothing wrong with whatever policies they've come out with. They are doing a brilliant job, but it goes back to the same issue that without finance, without reach, without capacity to scale, you cannot do many of these things. So, as it were, MTN is ready to partner with any organization that has the capacity to provide the service, but not on a relationship that is more of what do you call it, where the person does not have capacity and you're depending on the person to take the lead. The issue here, MTN has been discussing that it doesn't really need to own the license 100%. MTN wants to own the mobile license with a number of Nigerian investors. Good, serious-minded Nigerian companies are free to come and partner with MTN to do mobile money services. But we don't want a situation where I'm looking for this word, we don't want parasites to come and just latch on and without providing any value and say, because they're an indigenous company, therefore you open your doors for them. I am also indigenous. And I like to argue that today in Nigeria, I regard MTN Nigeria as a local licensed Nigerian company. And many of these companies that are pretending to be Nigerian companies, within the shareholding of MTN, I have many more Nigerians owning shares in MTN than many of these companies that show themselves one-man band, owns all the shares in his company, and he calls himself a Nigerian company. I'd like to see those companies go into the stock exchange, invite many Nigerian ownerships, so that Nigerians can partake in the good of that organization. Today, MTN is expanding its shareholding in order to accommodate many more Nigerians to the fold, so that we have a Nigerian ownership that is more widespread, and that people can enjoy whatever benefits come from the practices that we are providing, or the services we are providing. Many of these one-man businesses don't represent Nigeria as such. They need to have Nigerian ownership. And when I mean Nigerian ownership, I like to see people who go to the stock exchange open up their ownership so that Nigerians can enjoy, not making one man a multi-billionaire and then the rest the rest of the country lines up behind a particular individual. That is the point we are making. And I like to repeat that MTN is more of a Nigerian company than many of these companies that are claiming to be Nigerian companies, because we have over 1 million various people who are shareholders in MTN today and are benefiting from MTN as a publicly quoted company. Thank you very much.
Excellent, excellent, Dr. Ernest. You just challenge all telco operators in Nigeria to go and reach and deepen the Nigerian stock market and let Nigerians participate and benefit. That's a valid point. I can assure you we will be re-echoing that, and it will get to all that need to hear about that. So you made the point earlier about Africa, a single African network. As you're aware, the African Union is pushing very aggressively the Agenda 2063. It's 42 years away. And one of the goals is to have a secure, united, vibrant Africa, single continent. And we all know there are a number of initiatives that are already on the way to make that happen. We have regional currencies being worked on. We have Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement being pushed. You have talked about the Borderless Africa, a Fiber Without Borders initiative, which you espouse while you are in office. Is the time right and now for Africa to have a single telecoms territory where a single SIM card can work as if it's a local number all through the length and breadth of Africa? And a single operator can work throughout Africa under a single regulation.
I think we are very ripe for it. I left NCC in 2010. Before I left, we were actually proposing and pursuing that. You'll be surprised that in the early days of NITEL and organizations like NITEL around Africa, to make a call from Nigeria to Ghana, you transited the call in Europe before it came down to Africa again. And we fought it. Luckily for companies like MTN today, that operates in about 19 countries in Africa, you can use your MTN phone and move from one of those African countries to another without having to pay roaming charges. This, I think, is the same thing for Airtel and a number of organizations, but it is better, like what they have in Europe, where the European Union sets the standard for those things across Europe, because it will bring closer relationship, business relationship among countries and among people. So my short answer to that is that we are very ripe for it. And I think the AU should be actually going for that if they are already not doing so. It is very important that Africa, people are even proposing a single currency for Africa, but it should start with a single network that is able to roam to each other, and such that as you move from one country to another, you carry your own, the same phone with the same phone number, and you don't need to change as you move from one country to people. You see, one thing that some organizations, some countries miss, and I would congratulate Ethiopia, because Ethiopia was the last of the countries that refused to open up their telecom services to competition. When you have competitive environment, prices go down and people are able to make, even the operators even make money. So if we open up all the countries and people can roam without roaming charges, many more people will be making many more calls. And I suspect that it will be good for the subscriber as well as with the telcos around the continent. The time is now, and it should be encouraged as much as possible.
All right, so you talked about the African Union. We know in a way that, again, Agenda 2063 mentions some initiative that the African Union is looking at in terms of technology, our presence in space, use of satellite to solve a lot of problems, drive education, e-education platform, and so on. But the point of a ubiquitous single network for Africa was a bit silent. Now, I would like to just link this up with some of the questions we're getting from the audience, which relates to this point. So one of the audience would like to know if that, looking back at Africa at the time of antiquity, when Africa technology was significantly developed, what policy and actions do you think we need to take to bring back the technology renaissance in Africa? What do we need to do to bring this to bear? So if you could look broadly and also address this based on this question from, this was from Dr. Evans from the audience.
I think I lost you along the way. Can you repeat the question?
Okay, so the question is that Africa, if you look at the antiquity of time, Africa, there was a time where we were a more advanced technology continent relative to other places. What can we do? What policies can we put in place to bring back the era of Africa technology renaissance? What policy initiatives specifically across Africa do we need to push to make this happen?
That is a very loaded question, which I must leave to the politicians to answer. I'll tell you one thing.
Okay, I'm taking a few questions from
governments decide what happens.
Okay, but, go ahead.
Only governments decide what happens, and they are the members of AU. If they don't invite people like me to an AU meeting, my point will not be very much, but once in a while we get people who are able to think, and I think at the core of it is people working together with one purpose. Without that, you can not have that African Renaissance. When everybody wants to cover their own territory, because you'll be surprised.
Okay, we have about 10 more minutes.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so sorry about that. We have about 10 more minutes to go. I would like to take a few quick questions, and then I have one or two left of my own that I would like to ask. Someone is asking a question that I think we already talked about, but I'll this is just an affirmative question. What is your position about a single? So we already alluded to the concept of a single network, but should the different regulatory agency give up the authority to a single regulator across Africa?
Good question. Good question. The issue is that nobody should give up their regulatory powers to a single regulator. We do what is done, luckily in Europe, is already happening. Countries will still have their regulatory authorities that will do oversight, that will do local regulation, that will do local adaptations to what has been generally agreed in the African, at African level. You still need local regulators because those regulators will interpret those things that have been decided at the AU level, and we're able to make sure that they're implemented within the local environment. So there can't be one single regulator, but there might be representatives at the center to make those I don't want to call them orders, but those suggestions that should be implemented by each African country.
Global continental standard,
continental regulations and standards that can be applied Africa-wide.
Okay. All right. So someone just asked an interesting question. What's your take, Dr. Ernest, about Facebook, Google, Apple, and Microsoft and their strategy to take over mobile network operator space in Africa? A lot of them are offering programs, rolling out network. It looks like they want to begin to dominate the telco space in Africa. What's your take? Facebook is doing it, Google is doing it, Apple, Microsoft. This is from Olushola Teniola.
Very good question. That is why our regulators need to wake up, because nature abhors vacuum. There was a time, and I'd like to make this example. There was a time we were begging the governor in Lagos State to license a company that will provide optic fiber all across Lagos. Many telcos were ready to do it free of charge, but they were stopped by regulation, by policy issues. It is still happening in some states, and the most annoying thing are states that are so backward that ICT can actually catapult them to bigger earnings and bigger interest from investors. But our people tend to be short-sighted. Why are all these companies coming here? Because they see an opportunity. And the world is a global village. But I can tell you that while they are planning, we at MTN are also planning. I am sure the other telcos are also planning, because they say it's only a tree that sees a machete coming to cut it down, and it still stands and waits for the tree for the machete to reach it. Telcos will continue to evolve, and those who don't evolve and change with time will also have problems. Like the dinosaur was a big animal at one time. If telcos allow themselves to be dinosaurs, then they will have problems. So I suspect that while those people are moving the way they are moving, but there is nothing like local knowledge and local presence, that at the end of the day, I see them working hand in hand with the major telco to be able
Excellent.
to
Excellent. I have a couple of Dr. Ernest. I would like to take 2-3 more questions in the limited time that we have. So I will bridge about 3 questions from the audience into one. I see questions from I think Peter, also Engineer Edward, and one other person, I can't tell what the name is now. They are all asking, in the era of COVID-19, about the application of 4th industrial revolution broadly. One person is asking relative to education. Another person is asking in relation to health. And another person, I think, is asking in relation to mobile payment. So I will rephrase all their questions and put it into one and say to you, we are in the era of 4th industrial revolution. And there are so many ways technology can help solve a lot of the social and developmental challenges we have today. How do you see that Africa can take on these challenges and use the opportunities that technology offers to do so?
A very good question, and it's a question that is bugging the minds of many people. The truth is that it still comes down to regulation and policy making. That when you open up your markets and allow people to invest, you will get to that 4th industrial revolution. Right now, we are not there yet as a continent and as a country. The issue here is that the more educated our leaders are, the more modern they are in their thinking, the more we will be closer to competing with the rest of the world in this vital ICT era. Let me say that in order to scale, most operators will need what is called spectrum. The frequencies have to be there. For instance, we're talking about 5G today. There must be 5G frequencies earmarked and allocated to operators in order for them to be able to offer 5G. You need to create enablement for providing right of way. People need to invest in systems and technologies without too much restriction. I'm not saying that it should all be free of charge, but at least you do it with the realization that your aim is to achieve that 4th industrial revolution that everybody is talking about. COVID has also taught us that we can all sit at different parts of the world and be part of this webinar that we're having today, or this interview that we're having today, because of technology. Without a good broadband network, we will have been caught many times and we won't be able to establish a good link. So these are things that are so important that for our students in schools, in fact, NCC was at the forefront of giving computers to secondary schools and even went at one time to elementary school in order to introduce people at a young age to computers and technology. So we need to continue to do a lot of that. We need to build networks, and state governors need to ask questions. How do I get 4G in my area? They should start using those words. How do I make sure that the broadband speed in my area is top-notch? Mr. Airtel, Mr. Nine Mobile, Mr. Globe, what do I do to make sure that the service you provide in my area is of the highest quality? These are the questions leaders should ask the operators and demand from them. And so that those people can also work on the regulatory agencies and the policymakers to make sure that the place is open for investment in this important technology. Thank you very much.
Dr. Ernest, I will have to interject you. It appears the audience have reserved the best wines for towards the end of the party, but we really have to end this session in about not exceeding 5 minutes, because that will give us the 2-hour block where we plan to have this. So again, I have tons of questions from the audience, but there is one I really think I should ask you. One of the audience is asking to know, or demanding from you actually, that when will the cost of tariff on network drop, because it directly impacts people's ability to learn. Again, tying it to education. To scale the education system, the cost, the affordability question is being asked again. How do you think that education, e-education, can be more affordable so that people can learn on telco networks? And this is not targeted at MTN, it's a broad question for the industry.
It's a broad question. Okay. Very good question. In fact, for me as Ernest Ndukwe today, my biggest happiness is to see broadband affordable to all. And that is what I will like to pursue as an individual myself. And I know that the powers that be in the country, those who are informed, are also thinking in that line. It all comes down to the issue of access. Access, access, access. If you had optic fiber installation all around the country, broadband prices will drop. So we need to open up the country, not just long distance fiber installation, but metropolitan fiber networks. That means fiber within cities. I'll give you an example in Abuja. There was a ban on infrastructure build in Abuja, which has lasted for almost 4 or 5 years. How do you scale if you cannot put infrastructure overhead or underground? As God will have it, that was lifted just last week. So I am sure telcos will now rush to make sure that all the gaps are filled, because once you have the critical mass, prices drop. I usually use the example I give about price of telephone call. When we had only Nitel, it cost an arm and a leg to make a call to Europe because the number of subscribers in Nigeria were just less than 500,000. When we scale to almost 200 million today, the cost of call is actually in cents, not even in dollars. So scale is so important. Once you open up and you're able to invest, and the more telcos invest, the cheaper the cost of running the networks, and the cheaper it is to give services to people, and then people will enjoy the benefits of economy of scale.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Ernest. I will have to ask you this final question, and this is a question of mine I've been itching to ask, but because of time, this is going to be the final question. I'd like to apologize to the audience. We still see tons of questions flowing in. We'll try and compile all the questions and pass them to Dr. Ndukwe, and then you would follow the Twitter handle of Digital Africa on Twitter at Digital Africa _, and all these questions and answers will be provided online to you after this VIP series. Dr. Ndukwe, you have made a few references to the fact that governance is a challenge in Africa. We have, and indeed, I said at the beginning of this session that we asked 100 people how good of a leader on a scale of 1 to 10 do they think Dr. Ernest Ndukwe is? And we came back with an answer of 8.34, which is over 83%, 83% score on your overall leadership qualities. We also asked, how much do people think you have impacted the telecoms industry in Nigeria? Again, we came back with an answer of 8.44, asking over 100 people. Asking 100 people, that's 84%. That's excellent. We asked the final question, and this time it was whether people would like you return to public service. And we got a feedback of 7.14%, which is 71.4%. I am sure if you didn't do well, people will be looking at the response in the neighborhood of 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. So it tells us that if you serve the people and you did a good job, people will not only appreciate it, but will be willing to have you have another shot. In closing, Dr. Ernest, I would like you to tell us, why is governance so difficult? Are we going to be seeing you in public service anytime soon? And what is your vision of a digital Africa? Thank you. I know it's a mouthful, it's 3-4 questions in one, but it would be nice if you can touch on all of these areas as a final response.
Quite honestly, let me first of all thank the respondents in that survey. A man gives services at a particular time in his life and also leaves the stage for other people to continue. I'll prefer to see myself as a management trainer, a leadership coach, to be able to help younger people. And I would like young people who are ambitious enough to go into politics at a young age. It's very important because it's a very fulfilling thing to be able to serve your country. In asking whether I'd like to go back to service, perhaps not the way I did it before, but on advisory capacity, on boards of institutions, which is what I'm doing today, I'm able to also contribute my own quota. But I'd like to encourage younger people to take over. In terms of Digital Africa, I think I must have answered that question during this my talk. Africa needs to evolve. And I tell you, Black people in diaspora are looking forward to Nigeria and Africa going into the next phase of development. And digital and information technology are the right tools to enable Africa leapfrog. And it takes us to get ourselves together. And in closing, and very important, is to give our young people the best education that is available under the sun by the best teachers from anywhere in the world. Chinese people, when they were evolving, sent their young people to Europe, to America, and they went and learned. Those are the people that are developing China today. Internally in China, they built world-class institutions. Nigeria needs to build world-class educational institutions. We need to give scholarship to the best and brightest of our people, irrespective of their financial or background in any way. Even if he's the child of the poorest man in Nigeria and he has the brain, we should give that person the chance to become a leader, because there are people who are endowed with certain innate qualities. When people play their matches with their first 11, they have a chance of winning again. And I see it like a football match with the rest of the world. Let's choose our first 11 carefully, both in leadership, in the public and private sectors. And I tell you, if we do this across Africa, Digital Africa will be a success in the near term rather than in the far term. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ernest Ndukwe, Officer of the Federal Republic. Thank you, former EVC Nigeria Communication Commission, and currently the chairman of MTN Communications Nigeria PLC. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Continue to inspire the world, continue to inspire Africa. We wish you all the best. Please stay safe and keep up COVID and continue to inspire and make changes in the environment. We wish you all the best. We'd like to thank you so much.
I thank you very much. You're a good moderator. You've done very well. And I'd like to use the opportunity to thank all the listeners and the responders to the survey that you did. And I wish all of them well. Nigeria will rise one day.
Thank you so much, sir. So on that note, and as Nigeria comes to its 60th independence, Nigeria will surely rise, Africa will rise. We'd like to tell all the audience, please bear with us. We have limited time. You can follow all the questions and answer on all this Digital Africa social media handle. It's at Digital Africa on Facebook. That's a Facebook page. On Twitter is at Digital Africa _. Instagram is at Digital Africa. YouTube is at Digital Africa TV. Thank you all so much. My name is Bosun Ayeni. I'm a director of Digital Africa and a member of the Digital Africa board. Thank you. See you at the next VIP series. Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.